Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Andrei. Today I'm starting a new series of tutorials about MLUI. And I thought it will be interesting to go through topics and explain step by step how to build UI for ML applications. Because this involves many things: security, database access, UI implementation with CSS, UI infrastructure implementation, UI logic implementation, and so on. And I'm building myself a UI application for data annotation, for data extraction, and for ML model invocation, and for ML model results processing and display on the UI. For this logic, I decided to go with Django. I did quite a lot of research and I was thinking which framework or UI toolkit or library I should go if I would like to build UI for ML. I was reviewing like React, Svelte, other things, and at the end I came to the conclusion that I should go with Django, and specifically I would try to go with Django generated web templates, not with Django REST. Because Django allows to build web UI with Python, and this Python infrastructure is close to ML infrastructure. I could use similar libraries for UI implementation like pandas or NumPy. This means I could easier process data sets and load data from ML infrastructure to the UI infrastructure. This is the reason why I decided to go with Django, and let's see how it goes. So my plan is to publish each week one tutorial based on my progress, and as soon as I'll be progressing and enhancing and building this application for data annotation, basically there'll be a functionality where you could upload the document, then you could see fields recognized by the system, and if you would see some mistakes, then you could select the field, highlight it and fix it, assign proper label, and help model training in the future. And this would be one part. Second part would be where you could upload the document and you would get back the structured result with all the fields, key value pairs assigned, and so on. So this is the idea, and this is about UI in this case. So let's go to the source code. This is the main GitHub repo where the source code will be stored, and I'll post the URL below the video. Right now, this is the skeleton Django application. I thought let's have this skeleton Django application as the first step. And this is what I'll briefly go through in this video. I'll not execute all the commands one by one because I think it's not necessary. Since you have a list of all the commands in a README file, you could follow along by yourself and execute them if you want to recreate the same application. Otherwise, you could just clone this existing repo and run it. And and then look for the code and follow the README instructions. So every Django project is usually structured into two parts. First one is a Django site, and second is Django application. So site have different settings and configurations, while application part contains your application logic implementation, UI logic implementation, and so on. There are few ways how you could create a Django application. Easiest one, you install Django and you run Django command to create the application. But I would recommend to use Poetry tool, which is if you're familiar with JavaScript, we have npm package manager. So Poetry is very nice and easy to use and very flexible package manager for Python. It works on top of pip. So the first, when I was building this skeleton application, the first step, I executed Poetry init. I initialized Poetry environment inside the project. Then I created Poetry shell, and then with Poetry I said that I would like to add Django library to my project, and Poetry was in charge to add all the dependencies that Django is using and so on. And then as soon as Django was initialized in the project, then I created I created a site Katana ML using Django admin start project Katana ML. So this is the first part. And then the second part, the application itself. As soon as you generate the site, you get managed script is generated. And then through that managed script, you could create application and run application. So I'm using Python manage.py start up Sparrow. And Sparrow, this is the application where UI logic will be implemented. Then inside settings for the Django application, I enabled configuration which allows to separate runtime when you run in development mode and in production, so that when you run in development, you specify this environment variable, refer to the managed script and say migrate. For example, this migrate command is done once when application is created. Then you need to do migration this allows to create proper artifacts for Django application. Later in the future, when we'll be defining and building models inside the application, we'll call this command to migrate and create object relational structure that supports our model inside the Django application, but that's later. Okay, and to run the application, we use manage.py run server, and this would start the application, and we could access it from the browser. Another thing I did, I created a super user, Django framework. It comes, as they call it, with batteries included. You also get an admin interface out of the box where you could create users for application with groups, roles, and so on, and define different stuff over there. So I would recommend from the start using create super user command, create a super user for application so they could use it in the future to log in if you would like to build authentication in the application. And this is the URL that's where you could access admin interface for Django and verify the user you created just now. So let's look in the settings file where this separation was defined that would allow to run in run debug mode when you're in development and don't run debug mode when you're in production. Okay, so that's in settings. I believe, yeah, it's over here. We have default property and we check if Django env is equal to development, then debug is true. Otherwise, debug is false. Also specified allowed hosts, local host, and 127.0.0.0.1 for now. And I think it's a good practice because later when you deploy to production, it's better you would face this issue and access would be blocked, and you would need to explicitly add proper IP, for example, that would allow access on the backend for your application. And under installed apps array, you need to define your application, Sparrow. In this case, so this is the Sparrow application. And it's defined in Sparrow config over here with Sparrow name. This means when Django infrastructure starts, when application starts, it knows that on the current Django site, application called Sparrow runs. And this is where all our UI logic will be implemented here under Sparrow. So let's do a quick test and let's go and run the application. It's like that. It's very simple. Just you run it from command line, and then I can copy paste the URL. We navigate to the application, and then we can go and follow, for example, to the admin side. And if I log out and log in again, we can double check. Yeah, the user is Sparrow welcome 1. So if we enter the same user, then login is working fine, and on the users, we can see this user is registered. Yeah, so that's about admin interface, and this is the default landing page for empty Django application. So in my next videos, what I'll do, I'll try to, let's switch to main screen. So in my next videos, I'll try to put some UI, and I'll explain how you could start building UI with Django and add some CSS and maybe build like a landing page or something like that. So stay tuned and see you next time. Bye.